Okay, yeah. If you want to start now, sorry.
All right, sweet.
I'm Naomi. I'm a second year here at Berkeley, and I'm pretty involved in the teaching community at Berkeley, which is a student-run organization where we teach small group sections for some lower division classes. Also, I'm trying to start getting involved with learning more about the electrical engineering part of EECS.
Awesome. Nicholas, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi. I'm a second year. I'm also part of CSM. Yeah, that's about it for me.
Sweet. Dinesh, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm going to date myself a little bit. I'm graduating this semester. Yeah, so I'm a senior, been around Berkeley 3.5 years. I've had the great fortune to be involved in a number of different activities, both technical and non-technical. I TA'd for a couple lower division classes, been involved with computer architecture research, worked with some of the vehicle teams on campus doing some hands-on engineering stuff. And outside of that, I am into sports. I'm part of the Cal cricket team, if any of you happen to follow the sport. Yeah, over the course of my time here, I've had the fortune to straddle kind of the E and the CS side, so I can sort of talk about both of those if there's any interest in hearing about that. But, yeah, I think that's about it. Anything else I need to cover, Austin? Or?
I think that's good. We're gonna have questions after everyone gets introduced. Rayhan, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I'm Rehan Durrani. I am a junior. I'm the Department Relations Officer for HKN. I've mostly focused on research my 3 years. So since I was a freshman, I've been doing research at Rise Lab with Professor Joseph Gonzalez. So I've been pretty active in the research community.
Awesome. Catherine, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a second year, and I'm also involved in like the teaching community, so with CS mentors, as well as like in core staff for different classes. And I'm also involved in like the women community in tech, so through AWE, which is the Association of Women in E and CS.
Very cool. I think last but not least, we have Caitlyn.
Yeah, so I'm Caitlyn. I'm a second year. I'm also involved with the teaching community through computer science mentors and as 61A core staff. I'm also a TA for the web design decal, which is a student-led class to teach students how to make beautiful websites.
Awesome, sweet. So if people have questions, like feel free to unmute yourself, and you can ask questions like either to a specific person or in general, or you can send a question in the chat. So feel free to do that. Someone asked if things are webcasted. I think Rayhan answered that already. If we don't have any questions like at the moment,
if I can add a tiny detail to the webcast answer, the resources that Rayhan's talking about are the TAs and the smaller sections that every class on campus will have, which are never going to really exceed about 30 people per section. And so because we still hire TAs for all the classes, even in a webcast class, there is a limitation on how many can be enrolled.
Students had no prior experience in programming.
I don't know the exact percentage, but it's a not insignificant amount of students who have had no experience with CS before coming into Berkeley. For example, I think a lot of the students in 61A, which is our intro to CS class, don't have any experience with CS at all. And we do try to provide a lot of like support through like small section tutoring or like lost sections for people who feel like they don't come in with like the same amount of experience as everyone else.
To add on to Caitlyn, I think one of the really excellent things about the curriculum here is that it's designed to be able to cater to both students that have a lot of experience and students that don't have a lot of experience. So when I was a freshman, I had a couple of friends who had actually like never programmed before. In fact, like they weren't even sure they were going to do EECS until like they applied to college and their counselor talked them into doing it. And they're fine, and they're like an EECS major now, and they're doing excellent. So I think that the really cool thing is that the curriculum is well paced, so that people who, sorry, I'm like reading the chat, so that people who do not have experience programming can get started from the ground up in CS61A. And then what are some cool projects that you guys have seen EECS students be a part of? I guess I can kind of answer that a little bit. So through my research, I've gotten to do a lot of really cool things. I was able to manage a research project called Clipper, which does prediction serving, which is basically like when you take a machine learning model, like how do you serve it and make it so that people can actually use it. And so one of the really cool things that I got to do as an undergrad was I built this website called models.live along with a colleague at Rise Lab. And that basically serves machine learning models. So you can go, I'm sorry guys, I'm sorry to the panelists, I'm like shamelessly plugging research. But like that's a really cool project I got to do. Some of the really cool projects I got to do through class were like Gitlet. So if you take CS61B, which is the second course in the Intro CS series, it's mandatory for everyone. If you take it with Paul Hilfinger, he makes you do Gitlet. And Gitlet is this really fun project where you make like a mini version of Git, which is like a version control tracking thing. And that was a lot of fun for me personally.
Someone asked if you could talk about like some of the upper division courses. So for anyone who's has any upper division
I've been around a little while. So when I was from the software side, I think my favorite upper division course has been CS162 operating systems. In the class, you basically build an operating system throughout the semester, which starts off with first you have to build support for different processes, then you have to provide security protection for those processes, and then you have to implement an entire file system, design and implement a file system. And it was just a really fun exercise that involved learning a lot. And you work in teams of 4 for that project, and I had an amazing team, and it was just a really fun time and a great bonding experience with all of them. On the EE side, EE120 with Bakaya Zafar has been my favorite class so far. He's just really interesting. He's a great lecturer, and it's just been really fun and interesting material. It's all about systems and signals and how to analyze this kind of signal stuff that George just demoed.
Dinesh, did you have something else as well? You said.
Yeah, and I just thought I'm sure we all have our own favorites and we all have slightly different areas, so it might not be a bad idea for us to all go around.
Yeah, we could do that. So if you want to go.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the same page as Parth about 162 and 120. Both fantastic classes. Both have been super useful to me just every day of my career so far. I also want to add EE123 with Mickey Lustig is potentially the best class I've ever taken in the EECS department. If you're not super into EE, yeah, that's cool. But Mickey's one of the most enthusiastic professors I've ever had. And he really, really knows his stuff. So that's a great class.
I'll chime in and say I also highly recommend 162. It's a lot of fun and it pertains very closely to my research. I'd say 164 is also a really fun class. That's compilers. So you build a compiler for Python into RISC-V, which is an ISA. That was a lot of fun for me. The projects were really fun. The homeworks were a lot of fun. If we're doing EE recommendations, I'd say EE 149, which is Intro to Embedded Systems. So you kind of work at the intersection of like CS and hardware. It's a lot of fun for me. We get to do a very open-ended project towards the end of the semester. And EECS 127, I took it with CS 189. So EECS 127 is convex optimization techniques. That's a lot of fun because you basically get a crash course in linear algebra, which I like a lot. And CS 189, it's like the hype ML course that everyone likes to take. So taking them together was really fun.
Rayhan, they asked about EE courses, not math courses.
Oh, called out.
EECS 127 has got EECS in it.
Maybe we could move on, or unless anyone else has any other.
Oh, wait, I wanted to share more on like the CS side. So I haven't taken too many classes yet, but I'm more interested in like the theory aspect. So for me, I really liked 170 just because it was like the first time you kind of like write these whole algorithms together. And in my opinion, it's pretty useful for interviews too, in terms of like software engineering. And as like kind of more intro class, I did like 188 too, because I feel like at least for me growing up, I like didn't really know what artificial intelligence was. So it was like a good introduction to it where you still get to like create these pretty cool projects, but it's more guided.
Okay, I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat, so let me try to knock out a few of them. In terms of classes, everything that has been said, and also I'm taking EECS 126, which something I didn't think I'd be interested in at all, probability theory, which was actually sort of interesting and cool. In terms of freshman decals, first of all, shameless plug for a decal that we run as HKN. There's a Going Down the EECS Stack decal. Dinesh can talk more about it because he's on the decal committee, but it goes through like the full EE and CS stack and has some cool guest speakers. And also I took 2 electrical engineering decals my freshman year. There's one about printed circuit boards and one called Micromouse, which allowed me to make a little miniature robot that could follow a path. And, oh God, there are a lot of questions. For someone aiming at AI ML, I am not, but the go-to classes are 126 and 127 for mathematical like introductions, 189 for like rigorous mathematical machine learning, and 188 for more applications-based artificial intelligence.
To try and decode some of the numbers that Naomi just threw at you, 188 is the intro to artificial intelligence, 189 is machine learning, 126 is probability theory, 127 is convex optimization.
So another note that I'd like to throw in on that is that 189 is, I'd almost describe it as like 2 different courses depending on whether you take it fall or spring. If you take it in fall, the professors who do it tend to follow a much more like mathematical theory focused syllabus. But if you take it in the spring, it's usually taught by a professor named John Shuchuk, who like his focus seems to basically be to make you an effective AI programmer.
So
like it's much more applied.
So George gives me a hard time all the time for being like an ML person. So I will give a standard where you know I do real work. Just kidding. For machine learning, I would say 127 is an excellent course because it covers linear algebra, and machine learning is fundamentally rooted in linear algebra. 189 in the fall is a course that is a principal approach to machine learning rooted in linear algebra. I spend a lot of time doing like PC, principal component analysis, SVD, which I've forgotten what is, a singular value decomposition, linear regression, logistic regression, that kind of thing, and you cover backprop towards the very end of the semester. 189 in the spring with Jonathan Suchuk is kind of like George said, like an approach like how do you become an effective AI programmer. So you cover higher level things like SVMs, PyTorch, TensorFlow, like how do you use all these tools. 182 is an excellent course. I'm currently in it right now. I'd say it covers basically like what is machine learning. Like we start from like here's a neural network to like here's a transformer, here's reinforcement learning, like how do we do this stuff. It's a really good course to get your fundamentals down. 285 is a course that I took. That's a graduate course, so you might not get to take it until you're like a junior or a senior. But it's a really good course that does a deep dive into reinforcement learning with Sergey Levine, who's a very prolific author in the field. It's definitely an excellent course to take. 287 is also a really good course, although I haven't personally taken that. That's RL for robotics control. It's taught by Peter Abiel, who's also quite prolific in the space. If you're interested in robotics and reinforcement learning for control robotics, I'd recommend that course. And lastly, there's a 294 course called AI for Systems and Systems for AI. That's actually taught by an AI advisor. So again, a shameless plug. That's a pretty good course for sort of the field that I'm in, which is like systems that are related to machine learning. So it does a lot of like cool machine learning advances made, and then also like what are some cool systems that we use to like build and train these new models. Those are the courses I would recommend for machine learning.
Sweet. I just want to address something. Someone asked, can a person be too dumb to study EECS? No, there's so many resources on campus. Like HKN, we offer tutoring hours. So like there's so many student organizations, computer science mentors that offer tutoring hours for students. There's so many ways you can get help, even outside of course staff. And they have like review sessions. There's like discussion sections where you can have like a smaller section to get helped. There's a lot of ways and resources and like advisors on campus to make sure you have success. So I think it's definitely not an easy major, but if you put in the effort, the teachers and people are contributed to your success. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah, I do want to say also, I think Austin's absolutely right. Anecdotally, in all the time I've been here, it's overwhelmingly been true that the people who are finding the most success are the people who are not resting on their laurels or natural talent or whatever. I don't think I'm one of the people who's naturally good at this kind of thing. I barely had any exposure before coming to college. And I definitely spent like 3 to 4 times the amount of time on 61A homeworks that a lot of people around me were doing. It really is about what you put in, what you get out of it. You know, there's no real natural ability here. I think even for people who had prior exposure, 61A is something that will break down everything you think you know, and just bring it back to basics and make sure you're rock solid. So for what it's worth, if you feel like you're not naturally skilled or something like that, that's okay. I felt exactly the same way. Feeling that it is valid and it's scary, but it does not get in the way of success at all. This is absolutely a major and a university where what you get out of it is what you put in.
And
Sweet,
kind
yeah,
of,
totally good. Oh yeah, do you want to add on?
yeah, kind of adding on to that, I came in with no experience, and I feel like the best piece of advice is just to not compare yourself to others. And like at times it can be like hard because there's people who like, oh, I've already interned before, or like coming in with all this programming knowledge, but as long as you put in the time, you will be fine. So that's just something you want to always keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure. There's one question that's been asked multiple times, so I want to make sure it gets addressed. Someone asked which dorm is usually chosen by EECS students.
So at Berkeley, there are, I think, 5 typical freshman dorms now. So units 1, 2, and 3 in Blackwell, which are all on the south side of campus, and Foothill, which is on the north side of campus, right next to the CSEE buildings.
And Clark Kerr.
Oh yeah, and Clark Kerr, which is like even further south. I don't think there's like any typical like CS student dorm really. Students kind of live where they want to live, but the atmosphere between all of these dorms is like very different. I lived in Unit 1. It was very social because everyone's so like close together. You really get to know everyone on your floor and a lot of people in your building. But I know a lot of people who lived in Foothill because it was close to their classes and it was a lot quieter. And the rooms are also bigger, so it depends on what you want.
And in Foothill, I feel like I want to add that like you don't necessarily lose that social environment because Foothill, everyone lives in these like 10-person suites, which like gives you a very nice cohort of people you're naturally around, probably have a great time.
I would also want to add that you're going to find lots of EECS majors in every dorm. So if you're just interested in like finding people and you're worried about not having EECS or CS friends, don't worry about it. Every floor will have at least 5 to 6 people who are studying computer science of every building.
So true.
There's 2,000 people in CS61A. You're going to find some of them.
When I was a freshman, I lived in Foothill, and I basically made friends with this group of people. And we would eat together every single day to the point where people thought we were roommates. So I know people knock on Foothill, they're like, it's the engineer's dorm, it's super quiet. I'd say that's not the case. You know, you have the stadium. I'm sorry, I got very little sleep, so I'm like forgetting names. What's the name of the stadium next door? What's the
Memorial Stadium?
Not Memorial Stadium.
Are you thinking
Greek Theater?
Greek Theater, yeah, sorry. You have, I don't know why I'm forgetting words. You have Greek Theater right next door, you know, so you can hear like artists perform at night, or you know, you can put on your headphones, you can study and you can focus. So it is a little quieter, but there is still like a very social aspect, I'd say.
Go for it.
I've been looking up at the questions. Do you want to spill the tea on what EECS professors we recommend / don't recommend? Are we allowed to spill the tea?
I would say no. That's
All of it.
Can we at least
I don't think many people have had like bad teachers, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, Rayhan's giving me a look. The majority of teachers at this school are very qualified.
Yeah, they just have different teaching styles.
Yeah. Rayhan, tell us about Sahai.
No,
wait, this is also being recorded, guys.
The key thing to understand is when you arrive at Berkeley, you're going to be taking the core division, lower division 6 courses. All of those are, one, very well taught in general. And all of them have professors who care a lot about the material and a huge course staff that is normally very good at teaching what they teach, considering the number of them that are on the call. And overall, I would say, especially when you're going into the lower divisions, there's not as much variation across semesters. If you find that you really don't like a professor's teaching style, you can just watch the lectures from another semester because they're all recorded and available to Berkeley students. And overall, you can make it work because the material doesn't change that much for the 6 lower divisions. And you shouldn't really be worrying about upper divisions if you're coming in as a freshman yet, because things will change over the next 2 years. You'll find out your interests, you'll change your own views, and you'll evolve and you'll meet people and you'll have other chances to talk to people and learn more about the upper division classes. So have great confidence. Our 6 lower division classes are very well taught. All the professors are good, and if you don't like one in particular because they teach differently than you learn, there's lots of other places to turn to.
Yeah, to clarify what George said earlier, I think that it is remarkable how much the professors care. Like I find myself like continuously surprised by the amount of passion that the professors seem to have for students, because you hear all these stereotypes about how college professors are like busy with their research or the teaching is their second job. And that's really not the case here. Like the professors definitely do research, but at the same time, they deeply care about their students. You know, like for example, in one of my classes, thanks to coronavirus, we had to move everything online, right? So one of my classes gave everyone A's, like an English class. And one of my CS classes, they took us from having 5 slip days to having 8 slip days and stuff like that to really make it easier for students to be able to learn. I think that the main thing you'll find is that a professor might teach in a way that you disagree with, or he might have certain beliefs about like the curriculum that you don't necessarily agree with. But I think that despite that, they're still all excellent professors, and I really enjoyed all my classes.
The fun story I always like to tell is my research advisor, who I see a lot of and can tell you spends a lot of time on his research. When I had him as a teacher professor once, one of my friends made a mistake on an exam, but had done the question correctly on the back of the exam, and emailed him and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I made a mistake with my assumptions on the front page, but if you look at the back, you can find it." He then went through over 800 exams in multiple boxes in his office in order to find the exam, look at the back, grade it, and give the person partial credit. And he had no obligation to do that. The exam very clearly said they would only grade work on the front page, but he wanted to go above and beyond and make sure that my friend got credit for the work that she did, and ended up helping her get an A+ in the class, and it was a very great thing.
What are the other questions?
Also, as for popular courses, for freshman year especially, you focus on the 6 lower division courses, 61A, B, C, CS70, and E, 16A and B. I strongly recommend you just start with 61A and 16A. There's no reason to try and be one of the people who stacks those classes or stacks the series on top of each other. You've got 4 years here. Take your time, enjoy the classes, do other cool things, have fun with it. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I want to push back a little bit. I will say that if you have previous programming experience, it's totally doable to stack 61A and 61B your first semester. That's what I did. It's 100% not necessary. You'll get to take all the same courses regardless of if you do it or not. But what I find is that 61A, if you have plenty of programming experience in the past, 61A is maybe not extremely difficult. And so taking 61B at the same time makes things more interesting, at least for me personally. Again, though, it's not something you need to do. It's not something that you should really consider unless you really are up for a challenge.
But I disagree with Rayhan on this one. I say if you have the free time because of prior programming experience, use the extra time 61A. 61A being relatively easier for you is going to give you to explore Berkeley, explore San Francisco, make good friends. Classes shouldn't be your #1 priority. There's lots of cool things on campus. You're at Berkeley because of the community there just as much as you're at it for the courses.
Yeah, you can also talk to your advisor. You'll get assigned an advisor and talk to them about potential courses and what you're interested in doing. So a lot of people have different experiences and different things that work for them. And your advisor might be able to help you figure out what works for you. I think one question I think we should address is, are EECS students able to do a minor, minor in other fields or double major as well? So if anyone has minored or double majored, anyone here?
I was planning on pursuing a minor and then I opted against it eventually, so I can talk about my reasoning for doing so. So I think and this is anecdotal, please take this with a grain of salt, but the further I got through the classes, I mean, you've probably noticed that the degree requirements are not the most stringent. You're pretty flexible beyond the lower divs in terms of what classes you take, and you don't have to take a ton, right? Like you can pace yourself and space them out well. And I don't remember who highlighted this. Someone said it's designed to be finished in 3.5 years, and that's coming in if you don't have any prereqs done. So in reality, you can actually probably finish your requirements faster than that. What I have realized, though, is that at least in the areas that I've been interested in and have gone into, the whatever it is, 5 upper division courses you're supposed to do is not nearly enough to really get into it, at least for me. Because I had a couple different, subfield concentration areas that I was super interested in. I got really into architecture, systems, signal processing, a bunch of really cool stuff. And the 5 upper division classes just wasn't enough to really get into that material. So I think it depends what you're trying to get out of it. If you feel like, you have kind of one area out of EECS and you want to combine it with something else, like, if you're interested in fintech or something and you want to combine it with doing an econ minor, that's one thing. For me, I realized most of my interests were actually just technical, and I wanted to get really deep into those. So I think beyond what's required of the EECS major, sometimes you might just want to get more out of it. If someone else had a different experience or was actually doing a minor, please feel free to chime in. But that was my experience.
So I would like to chime in with my anecdotal experience, which is that it is very difficult to, basically, if you want to do a double major with something that's not in the College of Engineering, like for me, my outside interest is in physics. It's very difficult to align all of the college level requirements between engineering and letters and sciences. And I would basically have to have planned it out from the beginning of freshman year very carefully in order to actually make that double major work. And it's something that I hadn't really decided on until further down my career. So it wound up really being only feasible to do the physics minor. And so, I mean, that's not the most fortunate thing, but I also don't think I really lost a ton just by there being a few letters different on the piece of paper that I eventually end up with that says I know how to do EECS and I know how to do physics. So I would advise you not to worry as much about it, to be honest.
And then I have one thing to add. So I was actually considering minoring in because it was something that I came into wanting to continue in college, and I was like, it's only a few more classes. But in the end, I was like, I could take the classes without having the minor. And so I chose to just take classes that I was interested in rather than pushing myself to complete all these required courses that I wasn't necessarily as interested in. So I think it's definitely if you really want to pursue something, then a double major or a minor is definitely doable, but you have to make sure that you really care that much about having that piece of paper that says that you have that double major or minor.
I almost finished the public policy minor, but then I got distracted by law school classes that I wanted to take instead that didn't count towards the public policy minor, and ended up not finishing the minor. But again, that's one thing where the only reason I don't have the minor is because I've had other interests that I wanted to explore that didn't fit into the paperwork of the minor program.
Someone asked, can you talk about the work-life balance from a perspective of an EECS kid?
I actually want to talk about that because I've seen kind of both sides of the story. I came into EECS with kind of a computer science background from high school. So freshman year, I felt like I was able to kind of have the time to study my classes and hang out with friends. And there's also a lot of overlap between the two. As an EECS major, you do spend a lot of time studying with friend groups, and that's a good way to be social while getting stuff for your classes done. And then what I ended up doing this semester, cautionary tale, is taking too many units. I think I'm taking 17 units right now, and they're all pretty difficult, and then being involved in multiple clubs. And I would recommend that you do not do that, because I do not have very much of a work-life balance. I have like a giant to-do list all the time, and a lot of my life is consumed with work.
Yeah, I wanna. Sorry if I cut you off, Naomi. Are you? Or...
No, yeah, I was done.
Okay. I do want to chime in because I think you made a very, very good point at the end there. Balance is important, and it's important, I think, that not everyone is looking to get the same things out of their experience. So one, you have people that, you know, we've obviously heard from a number of people who had a strong background in high school. I sort of had a background, but this is coming from one computer science class where we spent a week learning what a for loop was. So it wasn't exactly rigorous. So that background meant that I was, you know, a lot of the topics that I came across my freshman year were kind of intimidating, and I definitely felt a little behind. And, you know, you'll come in at a variety of different levels, and that's okay. I think the important thing is, don't get too caught up in looking at everyone around you and seeing everybody's taken this incredible workload and doing all this research, and I can't keep up with that. You aren't expected to do that immediately. And it's important, I think, to find a load that you're comfortable with. It was actually a professor I had my freshman year who gave some very, very good advice that I've taken to heart ever since then. So if you're taking a class that's important for you and one that you care about, you shouldn't be taking that many other classes. Otherwise, you're not going to get that much out of the one that you really care about. For a different take on it, I'm going to quote Parks and Rec: "Never half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing." So that's been kind of my take. Is if you stretch yourself looking at people around you who are doing more intense workloads, you don't necessarily know whether they're enjoying it, whether they have a different kind of background, whether, you know, they have fewer things that they're doing extracurricularly. Like from the start of my freshman year, I got super involved with a lot of clubs. As such, I had a little less time for coursework. And then eventually I added research, and just classes were not always my only priority. I'm rambling a little bit, but my point is, don't worry too much about what people around you are doing. Worry about what you're comfortable with, and worry about the load that will let you get the most out of your experience.
Wait, I have one more thing that I would like to add that I just thought about. Don't be afraid to join like a non-EECS activity. Like my first semester friend encouraged me to join a dance team, and even though I did not know how to dance, I really enjoyed it, and I stuck with it because it was a really fun social activity that was outside my major.
Yeah,
I also
Join the hang gliding club.
I mean, there's a lot of clubs that you can join that are outside of your major. Like there's sports clubs, there's a Pokemon club, there's anime clubs. You can join pretty much whatever you want for fun, and I think it's just a good idea to not overload yourself and have time to hang out with friends or join one of these clubs.
Someone wanted clarification on like units and credits. So like most classes are 4 units. Like all the lower, like all of the E and CS classes are, vast majority are 4 units. Typically the minimum requirement for engineering students is 12 units. So that's 3 classes, like 3 big classes. People generally take anywhere from 12 to like 20 is the range. Does anyone know how much a unit corresponds to in work exactly? Is it 3 hours?
Under university policy is 3 hours, but the department doesn't follow that very well.
Yeah, so you really need like, it depends really on the class. Like some classes are going to, even if they're the same number of units, like your engineering classes will take more time. So I would definitely, your first semester, do a slightly lighter course load, figure out what works for you. And then if you need to add, if you are capable of doing more, you can just add more on next semester, or reduce.
Yeah, I can definitely like second that. A lot of people I know, like, they were like, I want to do like as much as possible my first semester. Like, I'd recommend just like chilling out, like adjusting to college life before like, and like figuring out like what you can handle before trying to add any more. I did 14 units, I believe. Like 61A, 16A, Math 53, which is multivariable calc, and just like a decal. I took the Cantonese decal for fun, and I think that was a good semester, like a good first semester with it. I think if I had tried to do like 4 texts like some of my friends did, I would have crashed and burned. So I'd recommend just chilling out.
I think
I did 12 units my first semester, same course schedule as whoever just spoke, and I without the decals, and it was fantastic and would highly recommend.
another thing that I think you should always pay attention to is that like you never know when a cool opportunity might appear. And so it's always worthwhile to like have the time to pursue, say, like you went to a seminar and realized that some professor's research is really cool and you want to take on a project related to it. Or you met somebody who's doing a club that you think would be really worth your time. It's worth like planning things out such that you are able to pursue cool opportunities when they appear, rather than like getting yourself locked into things that you might not find as valuable, just because like they're the opportunities that are available when you're making your plan.
Yeah.
I think someone asked about internships, or if, like if we could talk about internships we've had.
Sure. I interned at HP and Apple. My freshman year after after freshman year was HP. After sophomore year was Apple. And the great experiences, both of them. So I'd like to tell the story of how I got my Apple position. I was in a professor's office hours Bora, about just the course content. And as we were talking, he was like, by the way, one of my friends at Apple is really struggling to find good interns. Can you send me your resume? And I was like, sure. So I sent him my resume, not expecting anything to come of this. And then 2 weeks later, I have scheduled interviews with 3 different Apple teams. 2 of them ghosted me, but that's another story. But one of them gave me a job offer, and that's what matters. And so I ended up there for the summer working on really cool projects. And it was just a great time. And the actual process of getting the internship is really just you talk to Bora and then you get one. There are other ways to get internships, but that's the only one I've seen that works. Someone has a less tongue-in-cheek answer.
Yeah, I can chime in with my experience. I think I think I also have kind of a skewed view of this because I've never, ever gotten something from an online application. Every internship I've done has been through actually getting to talk to someone face-to-face. And this goes for research stuff as well. I didn't end up with anything after my freshman year. I ended up taking CS70 on campus, and I did some research with Swarm Lab on some robotic stuff, about 15 hours a week. That was pretty cool. My second summer, and I will also say I have kind of probably a little bit of an unconventional track because I came in not super wanting to go into software engineering, which is not true for 95% of the department. I came in because I was super interested. I wanted to do engineering because I was absolutely taken with like old NASA documentaries. That's what I wanted to do. So summer after my sophomore year, I was with the Boeing Satellite Systems group in LA. So that was something where they came to campus, had an on-campus recruiting event, and I got to, go in and talk about some of my club work, which ended up being super useful. I got that, ended up doing a bunch of signal processing / FPGA stuff that summer. Following summer, I got to work, so this past summer, I got to work with SpaceX also on an internet project, or a satellite project, and that's where I'm going back full time. So every single time it's been some company that came to campus, and I got to actually speak to someone face-to-face, because online applications, especially for very large, very popular companies, it's kind of like applying to Stanford, right? Like they get so many applications that you don't really know if they're going to read yours or not. It can be a little bit of a shot in the dark, and that's not to discourage anyone, but in my experience, it can be really helpful to get face-to-face with someone, whichever way that is. If it's like, emailing someone, having a contact, or if there's someone actually on campus, career fairs, pretty useful.
I will add that I have also gotten interviews and gotten pretty far into recruitment processes from just filling out online applications. Less so when I was a freshman. If you're applying for freshman internships, you probably aggressively need to either get a face-to-face conversation with someone, or you need to be applying to one of the programs targeted at freshmen, like Google. There's a Google one and a Microsoft one and a Facebook one whose names I'm forgetting. But that's my advice there.
Yeah, so the Microsoft one's called Explore, I think. That's the only one I remember. But yeah, thanks for adding. I just had a pretty skewed experience, so obviously there's some bias here.
We'll also add that for internships, people recommend taking CS61B because that is a data structures class. I will actually say my experience differs a little bit. So I did research for my first 2 summers, and this is the first summer that I'm doing an internship. When I was applying for internships, I mostly got asked about my research. So I'll say that, if you like general software engineering, like you really like algorithms, don't up on CS61B, don't up on CS170, because those are the sort of questions that they'll ask you, especially in like introductory interviews. But once you get into like more specific job types, like I only got asked questions about like hardware, like systems, ML stuff, and not so much algorithm stuff. And there's also behavioral interviews. So there was this one job offer that I got from Apple where I had like one interview with the manager, and he asked me like 2 technical questions. The rest of them were just about like things like trust and stuff. So I'd say don't stress too much about like job interviews, and don't stress too much about getting an internship as a freshman. Like I wasn't able to get an internship as a freshman, and I just did research instead. I'd say as a sophomore though, try and take CS61B and CS170 because those will really help with internship interviews and scoring an internship. And then as a junior and above, I think you're usually going to end up doing an internship in a more specific field than just software engineering. And so for that, just like take courses that you find interesting, try and apply for jobs that do work that you find interesting, that kind of thing.
After my freshman year, I actually ended up not finding anything, so I ended up just working. I found something like local to like where I live, and I just ended up working in like city government, which is kind of an odd path to take. But coming back into like sophomore year for recruiting, I think having that experience, even if it wasn't like totally like, oh, software engineering, right? It still helped a lot when recruiters are like looking at my resume. And I can also vouch for going to career fairs. That's where I think I got the most response back, was when I was able to like talk to someone and like say like, oh, what am I looking for, and like what can I offer? So I think that really helped. But yeah, and I also have never actually gotten a CS170 question in interviews. It's all been 61B. So, but 61B is also like a very I think a lot of the stuff they ask in interviews is possible to self-study. So there's like options there.
Yeah, for me, I also didn't intern after my freshman year, and instead I studied abroad. And I would like really recommend it if like Corona clears up. But yeah, I feel like it's a very good opportunity, and I personally saw it as like a way to take classes outside of your discipline and to like interact with people from like around the world. So I did like an entrepreneurship based one, and it was still like pretty relevant because the whole basis was forming a startup. So being able to like go through that process is useful information as well. And for me, a lot of my opportunities regarding internships came from like industry events. So Berkeley has a lot of like events like almost every day, especially in the fall semesters where different companies come and recruit. So I would really recommend going to those events and like just talking with the recruiters. And personally, since I've been in like the side of like coordinating these events, a lot of the times like helping coordinate them gave me like connections in order to ask them about it. But overall, like you don't have to have like a prior internship in order to like still be able to recruit and like get good internships.
I wanted to say one other thing, which is Caitlyn mentioned you can self-study a lot of stuff in CS61B, and it's a bit of a meme, but there's this book called Cracking the Coding Interview. I will say that I did give a brief flip through before I did some interviews this year, and it wasn't the caveat is it wasn't super helpful to me because, like I said, I got asked questions mostly concerning my research, which was a bit different than like algorithms questions and data structure questions. But there was a lot of like really useful information there about like general data structures, and I'd strongly recommend it to anyone who's applying for general software engineering internships because it's like a crash course in CS61B, and it's well written. There's a reason why it's so popular. So I'd say if you're like trying to get an internship as a freshman or a sophomore, maybe just like give that a quick flip through, do some practice problems. That'd be helpful.
Do a lot of
My other piece of advice for freshman year internships is the value of a Berkeley degree increases exponentially the further you get outside of the Bay Area. So apply to smaller companies. If you're not from the Bay Area, apply to smaller companies in your hometown. You're going to get a lot further. I got multiple offers my freshman year from San Diego companies that just weren't used to getting any Berkeley applicants and were just excited to get anyone with the Berkeley stamp.
We're running low on time, so if there's like any final questions that people want answered, we can answer those. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up fairly soon. If anyone has any like last words that they want to share too.
Oh, I think a lot of people are asking about decals earlier. If anyone wants to recommend specific decals, besides the going down the EECS stack.
Well, there goes my only talking point.
You want to talk more about it?
I mean, I can pitch it because I think it might be useful. So we run a decal called Going Down the EECS Stack, which every week we spend a 2-hour lecture with some senior student who's experienced in the field talking about the different subfields within the EECS department. So whether that's application software, machine learning, theory, computer architecture, analog circuits, semiconductor fabrication, it's all in there. So the idea is if you come in not really having a clear idea what you want to do, which was absolutely me, and I wish I'd known this existed 3 years ago, it can hopefully provide you some guidance and exposure to figure out what you're interested in. It's 1 unit, pass, no pass, pretty low time commitment.
Yeah. I took the Cantonese decal, which is just for fun because I wanted to learn how to order dim sum. I took the human-centered design decal, and I'm currently teaching the web design decal. So a lot of people who want to get out of like this like coding all day and want to get more into design sphere, I think there's a lot of like really interesting decals about that. Yeah. Anything else?
Awesome. I think that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to all the HKN members for coming out. We will post the recording, so if like there's something you missed and want to go back, the Cal Day people will have that. But otherwise, thank you very much. Have a good day, and we hope you all come to Cal. Go Bears.
Go Bears. Oh, do we have any contact information if people have further questions? Or
I guess they could look at the HKN website, right?
Yeah.
We could also just give them the like generic contact email address, hkn@hknmu.
Do you want to type it in?
Or we could do serve at HKN.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, good idea.
Sure.
Oh.
Yeah. So serve is the one that organized this panel today. So it was me, Naomi, Austin, and Nick. He's still here.
Yeah, Nick's here.
And George was the one that, of course, did our demo for us. So yeah, feel free to send us an email if you guys have any further questions. But yeah, hopefully this helped you guys learn more about Cal.
Thank you very much.
All right, cheers, guys. I'd say I'm looking forward to seeing you this fall, but I won't be here. But regardless, I hope you have a good Berkeley experience.
Well, partner, so I can say for both of us that we do look forward to seeing you in the fall.
We do.
Look forward to seeing you in the fall. Granted, there is a fall. we don't talk about that though.
If the world hasn't been destroyed yet, I'll be glad to see you guys in the fall.
Way to stay positive, George.
We will see you in the fall.
We
100%.
will. It may be virtual, but we will see you in the fall.
You can't think like that.
Look, why would I stay positive when I can be an electron?
So HKN is the general email for like HKN as a whole, and then serve is one of the committees. And so we do like public giving back community service and stuff. Giving back to, yeah.
We did explain what HKN is, right? At some point.
Oh, we might have done it in the beginning.
Yes, we were talking a little bit about it while I was getting the demo stream set up.
All right, TLDR, HKN is the EECS Honor Society, and service is so we have multiple committees. So serve is the service committee. They do things like Cal Day and helping out senior homes and stuff like that. We also have and review sessions for exams. We have industrial relations, which is what Captions are part of. So they invite different companies to come and do talks. We have Studro, which is student relations. So they do things like few runs after exams, so giving students cookies. And Decal, which runs our course Decal. And one more maybe. To join HKN. So somebody asked how to join HKN. If you'd like to join HKN, so we actually are. So the way that it works is that the department compiles a list of all of the people who have junior and senior standing at the end of each semester, right? And then they send us a list of people who, in the top 25% of juniors, in the top 25% of juniors and the top 33% of seniors, and then you're invited to join HKN, and we conduct like an entire semester where you get to know us officers. So we actually don't have a say in how it's done. It's strictly the GPA. The point of joining honor societies like HKN, I'd say exactly. Part is 100% correct. You get to know cool people like us. I joined because I really enjoy. Oh, I forgot Bridge and Prodev. So Prodev does professional development, so they do like resume reviews and stuff like that. And Bridge takes photos of all of our activities. Sorry, guys. Thanks, Catherine, for reminding me. I'd say HKN is really awesome because I got to find a lot of people who are like kind of similar to me, like going through the same problems. Like, you know, can find like I'm in a product tutoring and stuff. So HKN does a lot of community service both inside the East community and the Berkeley community at large, as well as like, you know, the city of Berkeley. And I really appreciate the opportunity to give back, you know, because it's a really great place and I want to make it better. A little rambly, sorry. Is it hard to get an HKN? I cannot. So I don't know about the GPA cutoff. That's something entirely separate. You have to ask the department. The candidate semester is a lot of fun, but it can be a little hard to keep track of requirements. I'd say it's not very difficult. You know, you just need to like manage your time, which is something that I unfortunately am bad at. So yeah, I'd say you should definitely give it a shot if you do decide to come to Berkeley. It's definitely made my experience here a lot better. Like I made a lot of friends here. I've done a lot of really cool things through HKN. IEEE is also cool.
George is in that account. I would also add, like, don't think about trying to get into HKN as you're like going through your life, because when you get an email telling you you should look into it, is like, that's the first time you should start actively thinking about it. Otherwise, just focus on having fun and doing what you find interesting. And if you want to focus on classes too, that's also probably a wise idea. And IEEE, I believe, does have open membership. Yeah.
I think
and that's much more focused on the hardware, in my understanding, at Berkeley.
I'd say
debatable. IEEE isn't really an electrical engineering club anymore.
Technically, HKN is supposed to be an electrical engineering club as well, but as you can see, most of us are not electrical engineering. I'd say IEEE is excellent. I think a lot of the things that HKN does well, IEEE does well as well. I think one of the best things you can get from a club is sort of like people who have sort of similar backgrounds, maybe are doing similar things to you. So I'd say IEEE is good as well. Yeah, I guess that is. She's roasting.
No, that is very false. I will say that much.
But it's definitely a stereotype, so I can understand.
Yeah. Most of my week is going to be spent on research, hanging out with friends, and the clubs I do. Classes are probably the thing I spend the least amount of time on in a given week, to be fully honest. So I'm not a huge studying fan, so I don't do it much.
I will say George gives me a hard time about this, but only because my idea of fun is reading. To be fair, though, you know, there are a lot of opportunities to hang out with your friends. So I get asked this a lot on department tours, sort of like, how do you manage your work-life balance, and do you get to hang out with friends? And to talk about what Naomi said earlier, there's really like two ways to hang out with friends. I think a lot of the time when you hang out with friends, you might be doing work, you know, maybe for the same class. Like I remember as a freshman, one night, me and my friends were working on like CS61A or EE16A homework, and we wanted to finish. So we work on it until 1 a.m., at which point we realized that we'd forgotten to eat dinner, right? And so we go outside and we grab some food, you know? And so I'd say like there is a balance. Like you do need to work a little bit to get that balance, but there's a lot of time to like hang out with your friends, you know? Like I remember another time, like last semester, actually during Dead Week, when we were supposed to be studying for finals, Danny, he's another officer in HK, and Danny looks at me and he goes, you want to make cookies at AJ's place. And AJ's another one of our friends, right? And so at midnight, you know, we grab a gig, we go to Safeway, we buy a bunch of cookie dough, and we go to AJ's place and we start making cookies. So yes, you know, there's definitely like hard courses. Like you definitely do need to put in the time to study. Right? I don't think anyone can honestly say it comes easy to them. Like you definitely do need to put in the work to not only study, but also to manage your time. But I think that there's also a lot of chances to like hang out with people and have a lot of fun. Like I don't think we're very boring people, but maybe that's just fine.
Yeah, I would.
My EECS friends and I once went into San Francisco on the Monday of finals week. There's plenty of time where you can go out and have fun. We do it.
Yeah, I would say my experience has been that when you're making sure you have time for these mentally fulfilling things, like that's important. It is a super important part of my life because otherwise I wouldn't be effective at anything I do if I weren't happy. And the most important thing for that is managing your time well. Even if you feel like you're not super busy one week, get ahead of the curve. Stay ahead. Make sure you're not just like completely slacking and getting swamped when it gets really busy. Space it out. Make sure you have time on a regular basis for these things. And I guess my idea of fun has shifted a little bit. I've had to trim down on the times when I just stay home and not do anything. It's like, what are my priorities as far as the things I like doing the most, right? For me, it was club involvement. It was one of my hobbies, which is writing music. And it was, getting to see friends and, grab a meal, whatever. So my idea of what I do for fun has, I think, sort of distilled and been like, what are the things that are giving me the most happiness? Focus on making time for those.
Yeah. One of the things about college is that like a lot of your time will be more unstructured. You won't be going to class from like 8 to 3 p.m. every single day, doing the exact same thing every single day. It's a little more dynamic. And that means like you can choose how you want to spend your time, when you want to allocate time to things. But that also requires more responsibility because you can easily fall behind if you don't have the time management skills.
Yeah, I will add that you can have a good time. Like one of my friends and I, we have like a Sunday brunch thing where like every 2 weeks or so, we choose a new place in like Oakland or SF to grab brunch on the weekend. So I won't be too concerned about not having a life. It is cool to manage time, but you can definitely do a lot of fun things. College is a really great opportunity to explore different hobbies and different fun things. Like Danae said, you might have something. I say like Cal does a really good. Cal Go Bears. Like I don't know, it's fun.
Go Gears.
When in doubt, go Bears.
Bears.
I think that's the first time I said it since I was a freshman, honestly.
Wait,
Like
That's,
twice
that's
every
fake.
day.
That is fake news, right?
Where's the spirit, Rayhan?
I say it every day. You should be saying "Go Bears" when you wake up, when you go to sleep, when you brush your teeth, when you eat a meal.
Happy, go Bears.
There's
Stressed, go
something-
Bears. Sad, go Bears.
If you ever see someone
Something
that's
goes
wearing
wrong,
any
go
Cal
Bears.
Go
if
Bears.
you ever see someone that's wearing
Go
any
Bears.
Cal gear, you are obligated to say "Go Bears" to them.
I'm
Here we go. Go Bears.
Go Bears.
Unless you're in the Bay Area. If you're on campus, you don't have to say "Go Bears" every time you see Cal gear.
So
I think that's the important distinction.
Yeah.
I live in the Bay Area, and we see people. No, we cannot pet bears in finals week. You can never pet bears. Don't pet bears. That's dangerous. I live in the Bay Area. PSA: don't pet bears. I live in the Bay Area, and so I see people with Calipro all the time, and I'm like a little afraid. I'm afraid that I will like go up to somebody and be like, "Go Bears," and they'll just look at me and be like, "What are you talking about?" But my dad has no qualms. My dad wears Cal apparel, and he just goes up to me like, "Go Bears," and he's like, "What?" And he's like, "My son goes to Cal." I'm like, "Yeah, I do," and he was like, "Yeah."
I definitely was once like, I think in the summer after my freshman year, I was just out on a bike ride somewhere and someone saw my Cal hoodie and just yelled "Go Bears" at me from across the street. It's great. The spirit is so real.
Don't pet bears at your own risk. Just don't do it.
Do not pet bears. Do not pet bears. Don't feed bears either.
Yeah, don't. That's breaking the law, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Feeding bears, yeah.
If they're wild.
They have corgis on campus. I'm not.
Corgi. I forgot his name though.
Jojo.
Yeah.
Jojo.
Not very nice though.
Jojo's like
Oh,
our
yes,
unofficial
sir.
mascot.
Oh yeah, sometimes I just walk through Sproul when I don't have to because I know that there are going to be dogs there.
Yeah.
Mm.
Avoid Sprout. That's a great way to avoid stress.
I actually really like Sproul Plaza. I enjoy the crowd.
It's nice, except when you're getting fired. That is actually like stressful. It's like, oh, like now I have to have like a social interaction. Like I don't know how to do this.
I don't like
Yeah,
it all the
but-
time, but sometimes I do just go there to walk around and see what's up.
So for those unaware of what Sproul Plaza is, it's the giant plaza at the base of like the administrative buildings on campus, and that's where all the clubs put up their tents, and you're constantly have people handing flyers to try and get you to either come to their events, join their club, or who knows what else they're trying to sell. You also had a lot of non-Berkeley students there yelling at you about politics, which, if you're interested in politics, can be very
Conspiracy
I'll
theorists who
say
regularly be found
I'll
talking
say
on Sproul.
Sproul is very scenic. It is also where Ant-Man and the Wasp was filmed. Like, I don't know if you guys saw the movie. Like, shout out to the Marvel fans. They like, there's this Sather Gate, like right next to the Sather Bridge. I don't know. So right next to Sproul is where Ant-Man and the Wasp was filmed. So it's really cool. Places to eat, not Northside. So we all, I think, mostly spend our time Northside because we are EECS majors. They have a, well, okay, not part is cooler than us, I guess. So they have a place called Hearst Food Court, and the one thing going for Hearst Food Court is its proximity to Soda Hall. The food is, to be fair, the food is pretty good. They have a Japanese restaurant, and
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Aki's, which is a Japanese restaurant, and Camille, which is like the Vietnamese restaurant. A really good place to eat is downtown. They have like a bunch of like really good Thai pizza Thai places, pizza places. Not very many Japanese places.
Where's that udon place? Marugame? That's the
There's Marugame.
Yeah.
There's also some other ramen places that are acceptable downtown.
Oh, what a snob!
Marugame's vegetarian options are terrible. Fun fact.
True.
Oh,
Yes.
I think the broth is not.
Southside has a bunch of like really cheap restaurants, but I will say that it gets a little boring after a bit. Like Asian Ghetto is good when you're a freshman, and it becomes like, increasingly tired as you become older. I'll say it sometimes feels a little bit like there's only like 10 restaurants in Berkeley, and I've been to all of them. But
There's
but-
actually so much food though.
There's a lot of selection.
on the weekends we go, me and Eric, one of my friends, we go farther out to like Oakland and SF, and I mean I grew up in the Bay Area, so a lot of good places to eat here. I'd say there's a lot of, it's a really great opportunity to try different cultures' cuisine. Like, it's obviously not the same as the original cuisine, but I'd say it's pretty diverse. A lot of good options.
There was also a brand new Indian place that just opened on Southside called Punjabi Dabba, which was amazing. I'm really hoping it survives the closure because it was fantastic, and I had been there 4 times in the 7 times in its opening week. Sorry, 4 times in its
closest
opening
thing
week.
to like authentic chai that I've ever had in Berkeley. It's
Yeah, I'm gonna say
incredible.
there's good Indian food at Berkeley. It was like okay Indian food, but not really good Indian food. I mean, I want Punjabi Dabba, maybe it'll be good, but I've been fairly disappointed.
That's fair.
But
At
since we are all EECS kids here, I feel like we should also talk about some decent North Side restaurants. Definitely don't underestimate Zach's.
Zach's is amazing.
Yes, Zach's is great.
Yeah.
It looks like a
Zach's-
shitty hole. It looks like a shitty hole in the wall dive bar from the outside, to be honest.
Okay.
But
it is the best food and the nicest people you will find in the city.
Yeah, they're great. But here's the thing. There's this place called Laval's Pizza, okay?
It's not bad.
It's bad. It's bad. Okay, when I was a freshman, I went to Laval's and I was impressed. Okay, I was like, okay, this is good. Okay, and then every single night, I have this one friend, Eric, Eric Feng, and he loves Laval. One time, we were trying to figure out a place to eat lunch. So 2 hours ahead, I was like, where do you want to go? And he spent the entire 2 hours badgering me to go to Laval's. So Laval's is like pretty decent Italian and pizza. The problem is it's also like the only restaurant that's open relatively late on Northside. So you end up going there every time you need a bite to eat and it's late. And at a certain point in your life, Laval's changes from a place you go to eat good food to like a place you end up because everywhere else is closed.